Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. The loss of a fallen firefighter.
She works hard. She just went to work. So this doesn't make sense.
Family and friends of Devin Gale grapple with the death of the young BC firefighter. Plus, court documents reveal criminal allegations against a former Surrey police officer who took his own life, and texts he sent to a 15-year-old girl. And Hollywood on strike.
LA, New York, Vancouver, we're all in this together.
How the picket lines in LA are set to affect BC's film industry.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Lien Yeung. Thanks for joining us. Tributes are pouring in from across the country for a BC firefighter who was killed while on duty yesterday, just outside of Revelstoke. 19-year-old Devin Gale died after being trapped under a falling tree. As Mira Baines reports, her death is the fourth link to BC wildfires in over a decade.
Tributes are pouring in for Devin Gale, pictured here on duty.
And if you look at all these words, this is what they did today when we were grieving her.
The 19-year-old's death has shaken the small community of Revelstoke where she grew up. Friends at a local gymnastics studio created a poster to remember what they loved most about her.
No one ever walked away from Devin without feeling just a little bit better.
Gale's former gymnastics coach says the young wildfire fighter wanted to study to become a nurse.
She works hard. She just went to work. So this doesn't make sense, and it's really, really hard, and there's going to be a lot of people grieving this young lady because she was so beautiful, and she will be so, so missed in this community by so many people.
RCMP says she was clearing brush just outside Revelstoke where a small fire had broken out when her team says they lost contact with her.
This team of firefighters had discovered their teammate deceased nearby after losing contact with her. And it looked as though maybe a fallen tree had caused that.
She was airlifted to a local hospital where she was pronounced deceased. RCMP and WorkSafe BC are investigating, but police have said there is no evidence to suggest there was any criminal element to Gale's death. Gale was one of about 2,000 personnel battling more than 350 wildfires around the province, including 2 near Revelstoke, which are considered out of control. Her death has sparked condolences from across Canada.
This is a very, very sad day for our province and for all British Columbians, and I want to say thank you to her for her work, for her sacrifice, and to her family and friends.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called her death heartbreaking in a tweet this morning. Still, resources in BC are being taxed, with the province formally requesting more help.
There are currently 180 international folks in BC. We have an ask out for up to 1,000 additional, and we're working with our federal partners to bring in some more federal resources as well.
Meanwhile, the teen's brother, Nolan Gale, posted a tribute to her and said she was an amazing sister, so kind and thoughtful and considerate. Her family has asked for privacy as they deal with her death. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was in Vancouver this morning and visited a local grocery store. Poilievre blamed the government for rising food prices, housing costs, and taxes. He also criticized Ottawa's response to the BC wildfires, saying it needs to send more resources.
We believe that the government in Ottawa, the federal government, needs to have a better coordinated approach to responding to forest fires, floods, and other natural disasters. We have resources scattered across the country that need to be coordinated and deployed more quickly, so that places that have surplus resources can quickly make them available to places that are in desperate need to respond to a natural disaster.
Poilievre will be speaking at a rally in Surrey at 7:30 tonight. And more developments in the ongoing saga of the federal government's Online News Act. The BC government has dropped all its advertising on Facebook and Instagram. Recently, Meta began blocking Canadian news from its social media platforms. In retaliation, the new law which requires digital platforms to pay for the use of Canadian news content. The provincial government says Meta's decision to cut news access to British Columbians was unacceptable, adding that it's sending a strong message that journalism is a vital public service. And CBC News has obtained new details about criminal allegations against a Surrey Police Service officer who died by suicide earlier this year. Our Janella Hamilton joins us live with the details. So, Janella, what do the unsealed court documents tell us?
Well, Leanne, the redacted documents were released by a provincial court judge after CBC challenged the sealing order. Judge Jay Solomon's ruling says privacy concerns were outweighed by the principle of an open and transparent Canadian court system. Now the details of the allegations against 26-year-old Corporal Dilbeg Hoti, who went by Dylan, are being laid out for the first time. Those documents, CBC has now learned Hoti, who died by suicide at this Langley gun range in February, had been under RCMP investigation for inappropriate text to a teenager he met on the job, including messages asking the girl whether she gets wild when she gets drunk and asking her to play truth or dare. According to the unsealed court documents, a 15-year-old girl went to the RCMP in August to report Hoti's text messages. The girl told investigators she met with the police officer when he responded to a call to help her friend a few days earlier. Hoti was arrested and suspended on August 17th, but never criminally charged, and the allegations were never tested in court. 6 months later, he died by suicide after finding out the Surrey Police Service was going to issue a press release about him. After his death, the force confirmed Hoti was the same officer suspended from active duty over breach of trust allegations. Surrey RCMP say it had recommended a charge against Hoti at the time of his death. However, it wasn't approved before he died. The Surrey Police Service declined to comment.
All right, thanks for that report. Janella Hamilton reporting for us tonight. An Abbotsford couple is desperately searching for a bone marrow donor to help treat their son's rare brain disease. The 7-year-old is currently being cared for at BC Children's Hospital. But as Sohrab Sandhu explains, the family is raising questions about how the disease is being treated in Canada.
How do you feel about having a bone marrow transplant?
I'm scared.
In December 2020, Bowen Funk was diagnosed with adrenal leukodystrophy, also known as ALD. It's a rare genetic condition that damages the membrane in the brain and spinal cord, and which doctors say worsens over time.
Usually with just loss of intellectual ability, so more difficulties focusing, behavior problems, and things like that. So it's slow downward course until unfortunately the person dies of their condition.
While there's no known cure for ALD, medical experts say with an early diagnosis, there's a chance to prevent the disease from progressing. They also say that window of opportunity is very short.
Before they actually show enough signs that they've got it, but not too far along that the treatment won't work.
Some Canadians have previously been treated at the University of Minnesota, which specializes in bone marrow and stem cell transplants. The family, though, says that may be out of reach.
We've been given a rough estimate of $1.25 million. And because we're Canadian, not American, we'd have to pay for that up front. We don't know if the government would fund for us to go down there.
They've applied to MSP for out-of-country coverage, but don't know when they will hear back. In a statement to CBC, the Ministry of Health says treatment that is considered to be experimental or still in the developmental stage is not eligible for coverage. This Saskatchewan couple took their 4-year-old son to the university when he was diagnosed in 2021.
It's a very comprehensive process to apply for out-of-country coverage, and there's really no mechanism to make that happen quicker in circumstances where you're put in a place where you have to act now.
In their case, they convinced the province to reimburse them for payments made out of pocket. In the US, 37 out of 50 states are currently testing for ALD at the time of the birth. But in Canada, that's not the case.
And the cost of the test itself, I'd have to look up, but it's not horribly expensive. It's not more than anything else that gets screened by newborn screening.
Meanwhile, the Funk family hopes to find a bone marrow match here in BC.
Time is of the essence because his brain is continuing to deteriorate while we wait.
Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
To learn more about stem cell donations in BC, head to blood.ca. Well, as we've been telling you, drought conditions have escalated to the highest warning levels in parts of BC. The province is asking people and businesses to conserve water whenever possible. And as Philip O'Weara reports, it might mean your next putt on the golf green won't be so green anymore.
A sunny afternoon at this Vancouver golf course. On the green and across much of BC, it's been a dry and hot summer so far, with little rain.
In the summer months, we do rely on our overhead irrigation systems to provide basically an artificial water source in the lack of rain.
The Park Board says it has a plan in place for its 3 full-size public courses it owns and manages.
We fertilize, we water, we have cultural practices to help get air and water down to the roots so that we can provide healthy plants.
Due to the drought conditions, the province and some local governments are now urging residents to conserve water. But Vancouver golf courses are exempt. The board says since 2016, all public and private golf courses entered an annual water use agreement with the city, based on the size of the course and its irrigation system design, among other things. The agreements specify how much water is allowed to be used between May and October.
We have a budget. It's based on a 5-year annual usage. So that overall, a golf course would use about 60 to 65,000 cubic meters of water throughout the year. And that, again, is under a water management plan.
Some private courses in the province, like Highland Pacific Golf Course in Victoria, are Audubon accredited. This means they are green and environmentally friendly.
With the current drought conditions, what we're going to see on the golf course is the rough being watered less.
Highland Pacific says it has turned off irrigations in non-play areas.
Firmer and drier conditions, so more distance for the golfers, but again, visually and aesthetically, a little bit more brown than it would normally be.
Palmer says there are sustainable wells on site, adding that it won't use any city water for irrigation should conditions worsen. Philip O'Weara, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC's annual cherry harvest is underway, and researchers in the Okanagan have paired up with local growers to develop tougher and tastier cherry varieties. Farmers say they're concerned about crop damage. Joseph O'Toole went to learn about the new varieties aimed at cultivating more resilient fruit.
We work on development of future varieties of cherries. We started cherry breeding in 1936 here at Summerland, and we have continued breeding and providing new germplasm and new varieties to the industry for commercial cultivation. Climate change can impact fruit quality, and it does to some extent. If there is a heat dome, the fruits will desiccate and there'll be like raisins on the tree. If there are more frequent rainfall events, there'll be higher splits. If the temperature is above average, then the fruit size and firmness are also affected. So all of these factors linked to climate change can also affect fruit quality, and that is somewhat concerning. We would want to identify varieties which are less impacted by these environment changes. We have an array of traits which we look at. It is kind of like a gladiatorial fight among all of these, and in the end, one will be the winner.
A cherry tournament,
yes,
if you will.
Anything that has defects like split, firmness, size issues, or poor stem, it's a strike against it and it's gone. So the idea is to kind of like identify the best of the best, and then
like the best gladiator.
Yes. If I choose the right variety for my location and I do all of the right things, then that's the game changer. That will bring more revenues to me as a grower.
And our science and climate specialist, Darius Mahdavi, joins us now. So, Darius, did you see the cherries in the middle of the newsroom there?
I did not see any cherries. Oh, that would have been nice to know.
Right? I don't know if it was from Joseph, but they were very good.
I do love a BC cherry. I thought we should talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the Okanagan since it connects so well to that story. We can see that temperatures are still a few degrees above seasonal. Nothing like that heat wave we saw earlier, but you can understand why growers are so concerned about these heat warnings that we've been seeing. Nothing like that right now, but you can see tomorrow we're still going to be seeing these temperatures a few degrees above seasonal. The main story, though, smoke blowing in from the northwest. You can see that everywhere except for the most southern and western parts of the interior are going to be having smoky skies tomorrow, which is a very similar story for the entire province. We can see 34 different districts have smoky skies bulletins and air quality advisories, hopefully clearing up after the weekend. But for now, people are going to have to be on the lookout. Nothing like that here on the south coast, pretty much the entire coast, really. Here in Vancouver, nothing but sunny skies into this evening, clear overnight, and sunny tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much for that, Darius, and we'll check in with you in a little bit. Hey, it's one of Canada's last running steam trains, and this weekend it turns 100 years old. And we took a trip to the heritage town of Fort Steele in the East Kootenays to visit the longest-serving steam locomotive in the province's logging history.
Hi, I'm Shannon Panko, and I'm the conductor on the Fort Steele train. The train was originally a wood-fired logging train on Vancouver Island, and it was donated to the province and became a static display for a while before they brought Herb Hawkins out of retirement. He was a boilermaker who got the train up and running again for us here at Fort Steele. It was the longest-serving steam locomotive in the logging industry in British Columbia. There are also fewer than 20 operational steam locomotives in Canada, so we are really blessed to have this beauty still running with us today.
Gene Rochelle, train department manager, engineer. There's nothing digital on this at all. It's all analog, and it's all pounds per square inch and miles per hour. So, yeah, we don't have a speedometer. The whistle is a unique sound, and just once it starts moving, you'll get the sound of it, and it almost sounds like it comes alive.
It's a 2.5-mile track, and the train goes about 8 to 10 miles an hour. 30 minutes is the whole ride, and there's lots of scenery and animals and wildlife to see on the journey, as well as a beautiful view at the viewing platform where people can detrain and take photos and hear stories of the area.
What do you think about the train?
I'm kind of loud. Loud is one thing, and just magnificent.
Hollywood actors have joined the picket lines, walking beside writers. After the break, we'll take a look at what that means for us here in Hollywood North. And thanks for joining us during our commercial-free live stream. With attendance on the decline, some churches are being repurposed for other uses. As Josepha Cameron tells us, one in Cape Breton has been given a second chance as a vibrant community hub.
In downtown Sydney, St. Andrew's United Church was repurposed as the Highland Arts Theatre. Wesley Colford came home for what they thought was going to be one theater production, but ended up staying for 9 years.
Obviously, Cape Breton has such a long and cherished history of artists of all kinds, especially musicians, but storytellers, playwrights, dancers, all, you name it, visual artists. And for the performing arts, there hasn't really been a home, at least not in Sydney. So we've really been a sort of magnet for all of the incredible talent that exists throughout all of Cape Breton, but especially here in downtown.
Now, Colford says the church building is not only the host, but is almost a character in the theater community. With its grand neo-Gothic architecture and a 3,000-pipe organ, it is still standing strong. The renovation and repair costs have been millions of dollars, from fixing leaking pipes to replacing pews with theater seats. No easy feat, considering the theater relies on a pay-what-you-can model.
Everybody gets to come here and have an amazing experience, laugh, cry, be entertained, be moved, and ultimately leave together feeling a little bit more connected. And that's what churches have done for hundreds of years at their best of times. And that's what the theater does at its best of times as well.
Colford says the spirit of the church lives on, and some members of the congregation have even joined the theater's programming. Reverend Stephen Mills was the last full-time minister of St. Andrew's before it became the Hat. He says the church was seeing fewer and fewer congregants and less financial support.
Lots of memories for me of the people that were here, of the events that took place, and of the history. I'm a fan of history of churches, but also communities. So I'm kind of proud to be part of that history as well.
And do you miss it at all? Do you miss being a minister here?
Well, of course, yeah, I miss the people and just the venue. It's just a wonderful place to be in and to stand up and see the people out there. But I also welcome the change.
Hollywood actors are out on the picket lines today. The union that represents 160,000 performers in the U.S. walked off the job demanding better compensation and job protections. They've joined screenwriters who went on strike in May. But as Greg Ross explains, it's not just American productions that are affected by the labor action.
Toronto relies really heavily on the U.S. productions that come.
Jason Knight is the co-owner of a Toronto casting agency along with John Bucket. They say the film and television production industry already took a big hit when writers went on strike a couple of months ago. Now that the SAG-AFTRA union that represents actors voted to go on strike, things are expected to get far worse.
70% of our work comes from the U.S. So we are down already, just with the writer's strike, we're down 70%.
It's likely this strike could shut down many Canadian productions as well.
There are also some shows that are written by Canadians, but they have SAG actors in them. So they're now going to be affected. We haven't heard back from Murdoch yet.
They say the timing couldn't be worse.
Summer is our busiest production time for obvious reasons, and there's been a real dearth of shows coming and work opportunities, which of course affects everyone.
Canadian-based actors who rely on U.S. productions for work will now be left in limbo.
We're all just trying to make ends meet. A lot of us have been doing this for a long time, but because we are so passionate about this work, we're going to do everything we can to stay afloat until this thing rides out, however long it takes.
Just fine. Yep, perfect. But actors only make up a small percentage of the workforce that will be affected.
You're talking about, hair, makeup, wardrobe. You're talking about lighting crews, grips, ADs, accountants. You're turning off a major tap.
I'm seeing a bit of this.
They say in all, tens of thousands of people will be impacted in some way.
Economically, it brings millions of dollars to just Toronto alone and all across Canada.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, for more on the strike and its impact here in BC, I'm joined now by Omari Newton. He's a professional actor from Vancouver and the head of the Vancouver Film School's acting department. So thanks for joining us, Omari.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, can you just take us through some of the main issues at the heart of this actors' strike?
Yeah, I think the core issues are looking at how streaming is going to impact the way actors are paid, specifically talking about residuals, and the emergence and the existential threat of artificial intelligence basically being able to use an actor's likeness and voice in perpetuity without their permission and without compensating them for using it.
Right. And are we concerned that these issues are going to happen here in BC and affect actors like yourself?
They will absolutely happen here if it goes through in the States. Vancouver is largely a service industry to LA, and we're very fortunate. We get a lot of film and TV productions down here from LA, so we will feel the effects very shortly after they feel it in the States.
Right, and we saw how the writer's strike affected productions over here there. And how will the actors' strike affect the industry here now?
Well, the actors' strike, like the writer's strike, it comes down to a labor issue where we have corporations and large billion-dollar corporations basically trying to squeeze every penny out of their labor force. So whether it's writers or actors, I think creatives should be compensated for their skill and for their work.
And what do you think the fallout or the residual effect will be for us here in British Columbia?
Of the acting strike?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, the residual effect will be, it just puts pressure on actors everywhere and on unions everywhere to kind of fall lock and step. And I'm sure they'll try divisive tactics like pitting us against each other. But, every creative I've talked to is in complete solidarity and support of the labor action that's going on, whether it's in Vancouver, LA, or New York. We've already been feeling a slowdown in productions here, absolutely. Worried. Yes and no, right? Obviously, in the short term, everybody's worried about how they're going to feed themselves, but this is the biggest threat to our livelihood we faced in my lifetime. If we don't buckle down now, it could really be the end of the industry as we know it.
And so the Hollywood Reporter just published a story very recently about A-list Hollywood actors who signed an open letter urging BC actors like yourselves to vote down a contract extension proposal by American producers. So that would see them earn a 5% increase in wages. What did you think of this open letter?
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, I have to say that I'm not a union representative, but from what my understanding is, UBCP ACTRA is not renegotiating any contracts right now. The conversation I heard was our union was looking to renew a contract that existed already. So that's what I can say about that. I haven't read the letter itself, but I know that BC and all artists here, it's not a divide and conquer situation. This is a labor issue of creatives and artists against large corporations who are trying to nickel and dime creatives. So LA, New York, Vancouver, we're all in this together.
Okay, we'll certainly be watching very closely. Thank you so much for making time for us, Omari Newton.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a seabird sanctuary born from the brain of a Canadian lighthouse keeper's assistant. After the break, how he convinced one of America's wealthiest families to invest in the future for thousands of birds.
It's a day train enthusiasts have been waiting for years, the opening of the West Coast Railway Heritage Park.
It represents about $1.2 million of a $12 million plan that will result in a major tourist attraction built around a rail heritage theme.
This is just stage one of the Squamish Park. The West Coast Railway Association has gathered together vintage railway cars and locomotives that until now have been scattered across the Lower Mainland.
We believe that the railway played a fundamental role in opening Western Canada up, and indeed it was the very reason that British Columbia chose to join Confederation way back in the late 1800s. So telling that story, I think, is important for both present and future generations.
Train lovers from across the province have gathered for the opening, sporting headgear that anywhere else would seem out of place.
Well, I grew up with trains. Trains were the major transportation system in Canada. They were our way of getting around. My father never owned a car. So if we went any distance from home, it had to be by train.
Many people in the crowd worked the rails in earlier days, including one man who spent hours scrubbing dishes on the Mountaineer, a fancy CPR run from Vancouver to Minneapolis.
We would serve 150 people 3 times a day. So everybody who washes dishes for a small family would have an idea of what it's like.
Volunteer members of the West Coast Railway Association have spent thousands of hours doing restoration work. Their pride and joy is a former Canadian Pacific business car that's 104 years old. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, much of the nation's business transpired in cars like this. The West Coast Railway Association hopes this and other projects will be enough to draw train buffs to the park. The mayor of Squamish is also hopeful.
We have been and are a dependent community on the forest industry, and we need to diversify, and this is the opportunity.
The Railway Association hopes to raise another $10 million over the next few years for interactive games for kids, train rides, and the creation of a 1930s-style community. They're hoping that will be enough to bring in lots of customers.
This is all Canada's history, and anybody who wants to learn about Canada's history has to deal with the railroad. That's the way it is.
Erica Johnson, CBC News, Squamish.
Taking you back to our top story, a 19-year-old firefighter has been killed by a falling tree in BC's southern interior. Devin, Gale's friends and family remember her as a kind and selfless young woman committed to protecting BC. CBC spoke to her former acrobatics coach earlier today.
She's so special and so wonderful. I just want everyone to know this is really hard. It makes no sense. It's just awful. It's tragic. It's just one of those horrible things. She didn't deserve this. She was just so good. I still am in disbelief. I think all of us are. It's just news you don't expect to hear. Devin's the good one. She's the safe one. She drives safely. She does good things. She makes good choices. She works hard. She just went to work. So this doesn't make sense, and it's really, really hard, and there's going to be a lot of people grieving this young lady because she was so beautiful, and she will be so, so missed in this community by so many people. And as an athlete, she turned up every day as a gritty, hardworking, fantastic teammate. She was always kind and looking out for the other girls and the other kids on her team. No matter what kind of hard day Devin was having, she made sure to check in on everybody else. When she graduated and she went off to university, she's off to nursing school, and I know nursing school would have led her to med school, and we all just knew she would be the best at whatever she did, because no matter what Devin did, she put 150% into it. She was gritty and hardworking and somehow noticed what everybody else needed, even when she was in the midst of hard work. She'd always bring, anybody who needs anything. She's the thoughtful thank you note, caring, sweet, wise beyond her years young lady. No one ever walked away from Devin without feeling just a little bit better. She was so special. And I just feel so privileged to have spent as much time as I got to spend with her over the last decade.
Since 1936, researchers have gone to a remote New Brunswick island to study seabirds. No one lives on Kent Island year-round, but every summer for the past 8 decades, scientists have set up camp there, studying the flora, fauna, and the seabirds of the island. As Sean Fowler explains, it all started because of a rare bird sighting 110 years ago.
Kent Island is a remote, 3-kilometer-long spit of land, often hidden away by thick fog in the southern waters of New Brunswick. Today, it's a seabird sanctuary that hosts a research station for dozens of scientists who come to live in near isolation for months at a time while they do their work. But how it came to be a haven for biologists and the birds they study is a story that starts 110 years ago. In 1913, on the island of Grand Manan lived a lighthouse keeper's assistant named Ernest Joy. He was out near Machias Seal Island in the Bay of Fundy when he spotted an odd bird that he'd never seen before. He shot it and collected the carcass, as was the practice at the time, and he brought it back to the island to a local naturalist and taxidermist by the name of Alan Moses.
And it was a yellow-nosed albatross, and which was very unusual. It had been probably blown off course, is not typical for this part of the ocean.
Word of the rare bird made its way all the way to New York City in the American Museum of Natural History. Curators there traveled to Grand Manan to try and persuade Moses to sell them the albatross so they could add it to their collection. But Moses had his own seabird collection and refused, so the museum folks left Grand Manan empty-handed. They'd later make more attempts to obtain the albatross, but each time Moses turned them down.
He knew what he had, and when they came a second time to try to get it from him, he knew he had bargaining power, so he milked it for everything he could get.
Moses eventually traded that albatross for a spot on an expedition to Africa that was being led by a man by the name of John Sterling Rockefeller of the wealthy New York Rockefeller family. Their mission was to collect another rare bird for the museum, a tiny green flycatcher named the Growers broadbill. So Moses left Grand Manan, traveling nearly halfway around the world to the eastern coast of Africa. The expedition journeyed to what was then known as the Tanganyika Territory and the Belgian Congo. That's today's Tanzania and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They would spend nearly a year searching the African wilderness and traveling more than 1,000 kilometers inland, searching for the rare bird.
And they were in Africa for months. No one heard tell of them. No one knew if they'd ever really even got there or if they were still alive.
Then, in a wild turn of events, Moses got malaria, to the benefit of the expedition.
Moses, one sick in his tent with malaria, the others had gone off looking for this Growers broadbill. He spotted it out of his malarial delirium. He spotted this bird that looked like a Growers broadbill, and he shot it. And they apparently, the story is, they found him passed out in his tent holding a Growers broadbill.
The expedition was a success, and Moses recovered, leaving Africa and returning to Grand Manan. But on that trip back, Moses lamented to Rockefeller.
We've spent all this time and all this money to go this far to kill a few birds. And he said, if something's not done on Kent Island, we're going to lose to extinction a very important bird called the common eider duck.
So as a thank you, Rockefeller purchased the nearby Kent Island off Grand Manan's southeast coast at the request of Moses and designated it as a seabird sanctuary to preserve the struggling eider duck population. And it worked. The population rebounded, and Rockefeller eventually donated the island to Bowdoin College in Maine to be used as a research station. Today, Kent Island is home to thousands of seabirds, and every summer since 1936, dozens of scientists travel here to study them. All because 110 years ago, one Grand Mananer spotted an odd-looking bird.
An Ottawa suburb is still cleaning up after a tornado tore through yesterday afternoon. More on how the hotspot for summer storms may be changing next.
We're all about fun, fitness, and friendship. We're doing a wonderful walk in the Capilano area, 5 and a 10-kilometer walk. Walking has become so predominant, and the only one good thing maybe out of COVID was a lot more walkers got out because we can all do this anytime.
I have walked all over England and most of Europe and the United States, and when we do these walks, we get these stamps in our books that shows us where we've walked. So I've got stamps in here from Colombia, from Guatemala. I've done over 100 walks this year, and so it's a really good record for us to show us that, yeah, gosh, we walk all over the world if you get into it. How big is walking? Well, it's growing a lot because as all our demographics age, kids leave home and they say, what are we going to do in retirement or semi-retirement? What better hobby to take up but walking?
Walking has been my passion for years and years, but joining the group meant that I got to do it with a lot of wonderful people, made a lot of new friends, got to see parts of the city I didn't even know existed.
I've never walked here before. We've walked on the other side all the time. So this is new.
Yeah, this is nice. They do change up the walks. You probably know that. There's probably hundreds of different walks. They repeat them, but not very often.
It's a culture for everybody to keep their health. I mean, I look at people that have been in the club a lot longer than I have, and they're my inspiration. If I get to where they are and I'm still that fit and happy, and life's good.
It can be a lifelong sport, hobby, and it is something you can do on your own pace. Our organization is non-competitive, so we wouldn't allow people to race or do any of that because that's not what we are. It's all about getting people out for fitness and socialization. And certainly it does get me moving. I mean, I could walk around the block every day, but I wouldn't do that, right? It would be too boring. If I know there's a group walk, I can come out and join all these people. So it gets me out walking and all the friends as well.
This is my passion and I love it, so it's helped to fill a lot of that time that I used to be at work. Now I'm doing something I absolutely love with people I truly enjoy.
Dozens of people in Ottawa are still out of their homes tonight after a tornado ripped through a neighborhood in the city's southwest. Efforts began today to clean up the mess, but also to study whether a new tornado alley is moving east into central Canada. Nicole Williams shows us the damage done.
Oh my God. In the aftermath of a brief but destructive tornado, this community now left to pick up the pieces.
We are very concerned with the debris and the lot of glasses are blown.
This man says the tornado went right over his house and tore up his roof. He says it's going to take time to process.
Yeah, I think at least it's going to take a few months for us to get back to the normal, and then everything happened like in a minute or so.
People now left with plenty of questions, including how quickly their homes can get fixed, many of them brand new.
I moved in just over a year ago, and I know a lot of people are under a year, so it's unfortunate to move in and then have all this damage so quickly.
Crews arrived early this morning to assess the damage and say it could take time.
Got to wait after the city and make sure that all the authorities, check it off, deem that it's structurally sound, and then we can fix it.
That hasn't stopped some from hiring private companies, hoping to see their roofs repaired sooner than later.
Battery's full. Perfect.
Researchers from the Northern Tornado Project are on the scene, trying to determine the full scope of the tornado.
We're going to be assessing, what the intensity of the tornado was, what aspects like the path length and the width,
At all these events, we also want to make sure, like, you never know for sure whether there was, multiple tornadoes or whether there was other damage.
These experts confirm at least 2 tornadoes touched down in the Ottawa and Montreal regions and are investigating the possibility of other destructive weather along the storm's path. Experts say they're seeing more tornadoes in central Canada, especially near populated areas.
There's speculation that the tornado alley in Canada is shifting a little bit from being, more so in the prairies to more so maybe in, Ontario and southern Quebec. We'll confirm that over the next, years and decades as we collect more and more data.
And Canada isn't the only place experiencing extreme weather right now. In southern Europe, they are facing temperatures in the 40s in many countries. Chris Brown shows us the damage it's doing.
Athens is sweltering, too hot even to visit one of the world's greatest historic sites, the Parthenon, which was temporarily closed Friday.
We didn't know we were coming on the hottest day of the year. We knew we were coming in July. We did not know it was going to be 105 degrees.
That's over 40 degrees Celsius, more than hot enough to cause serious harm to human health for people who don't get enough shade or water.
Yesterday we had 40 cases of people feeling dizziness and dysphoria, and some of them had small injuries.
Similar temperatures in Spain have put practically all of the country at extreme risk of forest fires, which are now starting to take off in Morocco and have already scorched Croatia. Everything was brand new, even the kitchen, he said. This is the second savage summer for Europe in a row. 2022's blast of extreme heat may have killed an astonishing 61,000 people, Spanish researchers reported this week, as they emphasized that European cities are not adapting fast enough to a warming climate. Italy, Greece, and Spain and Portugal are the most affected, countries characterized by economic conditions that are not as advanced as the rest of the continent, he said. Especially worrying about this heat wave is that it could last for weeks, creating similar lethal conditions to last summer.
So the buildings warm, and during the night, people cannot have a proper rest, and all these factors contribute then to the excess mortality.
Tourists, of course, are also at high risk. It's peak season, and at famous attractions in Italy and Greece, there are multiple reports of people fainting from the heat. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
And Darius Madavi's back, our science and climate specialist. So, Darius, what's the setup? What's led to this extreme heat we're seeing over in Europe?
It's really been this steering flow coming up from the south, carrying all that heat into the south of Europe. And unfortunately, it looks like it's here to stay at least through the weekend. We're looking at places in Spain, Italy, and Greece topping 45 degrees over the weekend. You have to keep in mind, seeing temperatures like that higher than our body temperature, a fan is not going to cool you down. It's only going to make you hotter. You really need water. You need to stay hydrated. You need air conditioning. That's really the only way that people are going to get through this. Fortunately, we're not seeing temperatures like that here in BC. Still pretty hot in the southern interior. Usayu saw the hottest temperature in Canada earlier today, but nothing really like that in the central parts of the country. That smoke is, of the province, that smoke is really blocking the sun and keeping temperatures down. If we look to tomorrow, that smoke is going to keep being carried down through the southern parts of the province. So smoky skies down here. Those thunderstorms we've been seeing all week carrying on in the northeast, and nothing but showers for the north coast and through the central parts of the coast. Here in Vancouver, though, nothing like that. Really just sun ahead for the weekend. We might see some rain on Monday, hoping for that really, because we could really use the moisture. And then temperatures start to climb back up. We're going to see sunny skies through next week. And then looking ahead, it doesn't seem like we have much rain in the forecast. It seems like temperatures are set to stay high through the summer, according to new analysis just released by the province. So we're really looking at hot weather ahead.
Okay, we are all hoping for that Monday rain then. Thank you so much for that, Darius.
Thank you.
A man who drove a moose calf to a rehabilitation center in his work vehicle has been fired for not following company protocol. The man says that when he found the moose on a highway, there was a bear close by, and he did what he thought was best. Take a look.
Where's Mom? Hey, where'd Mom go?
I noticed that calf moose on the opposite shoulder of the road all by itself. I pulled up kind of parallel with the moose calf, and like I said, as an outdoorsman, you scan the area, and I didn't see Mom around at all, and I'm well aware of leaving stuff alone and letting nature do its thing. As soon as I stopped and opened my door, she just comes trotting across the road and proceeds to try and get in the pickup truck.
Hang on, what am I gonna do for you? Where's Mom?
Looked up across the road, I just happened to glance over there. There was that black bear standing there. And so I scooted her over to the passenger side and stuck her in the truck. I believe that bear had been chasing probably her and her mom, and she just ran out of gas before her mom. I waited there for a little bit, thinking maybe Mom would stick her head out of the woods, make an appearance. Still never saw her. My next option is to get you some help. As soon as I got into service, I tried to call the conservation officer. I believe strongly enough that what I did was the right thing for that calf. I told everybody right from the start that I fully realize it is against the law to pick up wild animals off the road or from out in nature, anywhere. All that being said, if they had decided that my actions were somehow, nefarious and it was a bad call and they decided to charge me, that's fine. I would rather pay that fine or get in trouble and still knowing that in my heart that I did the right thing.
Okay, well, hang on. What am I gonna do for you? Where's Mom?
The man's employer, AFD Petroleum, meanwhile, is sharing its side of the story, writing it has thorough human resources policies and procedures in place, in addition to protocols surrounding interactions with wildlife. The company further writes the former employee's actions breached those protocols. Instead of reporting the situation to a conservation officer and allowing the authorities to handle the rescue and relocation of the moose, the individual made the independent decision to transport an uninjured moose calf, a wild animal, in the front seat of his company vehicle for many hours. This not only put the employee and other road users at risk, but also potentially caused distress and harm to the moose. It's a journey to a previously unvisited part of the moon, why India has charted the course for the lunar South Pole. That's next.
They're just here. You get a lot of ladybugs.
Ladybugs have caught the imagination of people over time, and when we started to say that, hey, you want to come get some ladybugs and sort of thing, it took off,
You want to talk about ladybugs? Well, my dad said that they're going to be releasing ladybugs, but I think there's just a bunch of lines where you can there's a fire truck, and then you can get some ladybugs, and there's cookies and stuff.
They crawl on their red.
Yeah, do you love the color red?
Yeah.
What else have you been doing today that's so much fun?
Planting the seeds of the ladybugs that are, if you grow the seeds, they're going to be flowers.
We have 30% of our trees are roughly elm trees here. We notice, when it comes to our elms, we get a lot of aphids and that kind of predatory insect on our elm trees. And this is just one way that we do to help protect some of our trees. So we do a program where we release the ladybugs using our residents actually and teaching them all about what ladybugs can do for eating aphids.
Can you tell me a fact about ladybugs? What do you know about them?
They have black dots. Every dot of them, that's how old they are.
I'm having lots of fun.
You're having lots of fun? Can you tell me about your face paint I see you have?
It's a butterfly.
A butterfly? Do you like butterflies?
Yeah.
Do you also like ladybugs?
Yeah.
What do you love about ladybugs?
Because it has the color of red, which is love.
Color red is the color of love?
Yes.
beautiful venue.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. CBC Vancouver is the premier media partner of the 2023 Surrey Fusion Festival, July 22nd and 23rd. Visit the festive cultural pavilions, enjoy free live music and family activities, and make sure you drop by the CBC tent for your chance to win CBC swag. And the Herb Original is a new CBC British Columbia podcast. Stream it today on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
India has launched a rocket to explore the lunar surface. It took off today, and Chris O'Neill-Yates explains what the mission hopes to achieve.
3, 2, 1, 0.
With the launch of Chandrayaan-3, India also launches its bid to go where no one has gone before, to the south pole of the moon.
We have a majestic liftoff.
It's a moment of glory for India, and I think a moment of destiny for all of us.
India's last attempt, Chandrayaan-2, ended in a crash. This relaunch with design and software fixes is part of India's bid to become a global leader in commercial space launches.
Whether it is satellite launches, whether it is other launches. And this would further enhance India's credibility and India's ability to undertake those launches, which other countries who are not capable of doing.
Chandrayaan-3 cost $75 million US, relatively cheap for space travel, giving India a big advantage.
They have figured out ways to kind of keep costs minimal and to really rely on their own local resources, whether that's in people or in products and materials, and using that in their innovations.
The three major objectives for this mission: to demonstrate a safe, soft landing on the moon's surface, and to conduct rover operations and experiments. If all goes as planned, Chandrayaan-3 will make history on August 23rd, landing as the sun rises over the south pole of the moon. Chris O'Neill-Yates, CBC News, St. John's.
Two local choreographers are gaining international acclaim. Their work on the BC shot series Grease, Rise of the Pink Ladies has been nominated for an Emmy Award. And earlier today, the choreographers had a chance to chat with On the Coast host Gloria Makarenko. Have a look.
The new show Grease, Rise of the Pink Ladies, which is streaming on Paramount Plus. Jeffrey Mortensen and Louise Haradsky are officially Emmy-nominated choreographers. What can you tell us about some of the specific routines that are being recognized?
So it all starts with a script and the music. There's 30 original songs in this series. And so between balancing reading through everything, concept meetings, listening to the music, we start to break things down, and we really build the bare bones in a studio of what we imagine this piece looking like. And then it all starts in a big sound stage, and then we move it to the set, make sure that all the elements work together, costumes, props. And then there we go. Then we're off to the races and we're shooting.
Well, sure. And Jeffrey, interesting just to hear Louise take you through all the steps, you know, the initial rehearsals, and now you've got to add in the stage and the set and the props. So what's it like for you to see all of this come together and recognized in this way?
We kind of go away and make, and then when we show up on set, this magical thing exists for the cast and crew, and then eventually for the audiences to see. But what they don't see is the hours and hours and hours of prep and failed versions of things. And I think that the recognition of a nomination or of any award of any kind for any artist in general is really, it's important for the people who are not making to see that, because then they get kind of a little bit more insight into the amount of work that goes into these shows.
And what happens next, Louise? Are you on pins and needles until the award show?
Well, I think we have to decide what to wear. That's the big question.
Oh, she wouldn't have a problem with that. That blouse is gorgeous. Love seeing the amount of talent here in BC. Never ceases to amaze me. Congrats to those two. And that's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for watching CBC News at 6. And a reminder, if you're not already watching us on CBC Gem, that's our free app. You may want to check us out there. And that's it for us. Have a great weekend. Janelle Hamilton will be here later tonight.